Stephanie. Welcome back to Story Concierge. It is Writer Wednesday, and I'm here with tips on how to write a great synopsis for your novel. The reason that we need a synopsis is many times agents will want an overview of what your story is about, which is more than what your pitch will tell them. They want to know the complete story arc, and that is why you need a synopsis. Most writers struggle with this. I struggle with it too. I wish that I could pay somebody to write my synopsis. It is not my forte. Synopses are very hard to write because you are taking your 70,000 to, if you have fantasy, potentially 120,000 word novel, and you're summing it up in 500 words. It's very, very hard to do. I think it's even harder to do than a pitch. As you know, I love pitching and I excel at pitching, and I even have a new mini course on how to write a pitch called the Pitch Fix. Pitching is my jam. Writing query letters is my jam, but the synopsis is a bit trickier. It's a bit harder. The secret is you need to make sure that your synopsis is written in a more formal way. It needs to tell the agent or whoever you're sending it to exactly what happens in the novel. So you need to hit the main plot points, and those are the status quo, the inciting incident, the narrative of what is actually happening in the book, the climax, and the resolution. Those are the things that you need to have in the synopsis. A lot of people start off writing their synopsis and they give the whole first chapter and they give a lot of the backstory, and people are already bored with it. It really needs to be a complete picture of your novel. Go over the 5 things that you need to have in there really briefly so you can understand what they are. So the status quo is when you open your story. When the story opens, it's the status quo about your character. It's their ordinary world. It's what they're living in. I'm going to use Harry Potter. Again, I know some people are getting sick of Harry Potter, but everybody's read it, and so it's a really, really good one for me to use. In Harry Potter, when the book starts, Harry Potter is an orphan who's living under the stairs of his horrible aunt and uncle. That's the status quo. So in your synopsis, if you were writing a synopsis for the first Harry Potter book, that's what you would say. You would say, this is a story about a 10-year-old boy who's an orphan who lives with his aunt and uncle, and he's forced to live under the stairs. And then you'd give a little bit of details about that thing. When you think about writing your synopsis in 5 sections, think of it like back in college or high school when you were writing those essays that were 5 paragraphs long. Do you remember those? I remember those. There were tons of them. It's the same sort of concept. So in that first paragraph, you really want to talk about the status quo. Now, the inciting incident is what disrupts the story. It's what moves the story forward. In the case of Harry Potter, this is going to be Hagrid showing up and telling him that he's a wizard. This is what disrupts Harry's life. This is what is the catalyst for the rest of the stories. So you want to have your inciting incident in your synopsis. Tell what the story is about. In The Fault in Our Stars, the catalyst is her meeting and deciding to go out with Augustus Waters. Is Hazel Grace, the main character, deciding that she's going to go out with Augustus Waters. In Twilight, when Bella Swan actually meets Edward Cullen, that's the inciting incident. The inciting incident is not that she moves to Forks. She lives in Forks. That's her status quo. She's just moved to this new place. She doesn't really know anybody. Her parents are separated. Her mom's moved to Florida, and she's now in Forks. That's her status quo, even though it's new for her. The inciting incident is her meeting Edward Cullen. The next thing that you need to talk about is the narrative of the story, what is happening in the story. So for Harry Potter, he has gone to a school for wizardry. So that is what the story is about. So you want to say that. You want to say that he has gone off to Hogwarts, a school for wizardry, to learn about being a wizard. And there he discovers about Voldemort killing his parents. And, you know, he's the boy who lived, and he finds out what that means. In Twilight, she decides to date Edward. I don't know why. I would never date a vampire. Like, that's the ultimate deal breaker. You're a vampire, sorry. But anyhow, go with it. It's a story. She decides that she's going to date him and be with him. That's her exotic world. And then in The Fault in Our Stars, Hazel Grace Lancaster decides to pursue a relationship with Augustus Waters. And that is what's happening in the story. Now, this part, I believe, should be a little bit longer than others because you really want to talk about what's happening, but don't overdo it. Don't give too many details. Just go through the story arcs, because then you're leading up to the climax of the story, whatever it is. In The Fault in Our Stars, if you haven't read it, this is a spoiler alert. In The Fault in Our Stars, it's Augustus is very, very sick and he dies. That is the climax of the story, because his death is a catalyst for her resolution. In Harry Potter, obviously it's going to be that he's going to be fighting some form of Voldemort. In Twilight, it's going to be that they go to this baseball game and this other vampire, James, decides that he's going to kill Bella. So the climax is they are all in Arizona, where she's from, and James has come to kill her, and that's the climax, which catapults them into the resolution. Now, the resolution is just what it says. It is what resolves the story. It is the end of the story. So you need to have that in there. When you are pitching your book, you don't put the resolution in the pitch. You just give a hint of what could happen. You talk more about the catalyst and the inciting incident. And, you know, this is when an orphan boy finds out that he is a wizard, because you want the reader to want to know more. If you give them the solution, they're not going to want to know more because you've already given them the answer. It's like when you go see a movie trailer and it tells you the entire thing, and you're like, well, now I don't need to see the movie because I've seen the entire plot. It's the same thing with your synopsis. It's the same thing with your query. You don't want to tell the whole thing, but in your synopsis, you do, because you want the agent or publishing house or whoever you're sending this to know what happens. Because if they have the entire story in context and they know what happens, it's easier for them to sell it, to sell you and your story. So I hope that made sense. This is a short video this week, but I just really wanted to cover that because so many people are talking about how to write a great synopsis. Now, I've put a link in the description from a writing site that I follow, and they have a really good page on writing synopsis, and I hope that it is helpful for you. Also, I always recommend Jane Freeman because she is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure she has covered this. There are a lot of writing sites that will cover it for you. If you don't know how to write one, reach out to others, look up sites, spend time perfecting it without being ridiculous, but you really want it to be solid, and it is telling the story of what your story is about. So have a great rest of your week. Thank you for watching. As always, please subscribe. Please come into my Female Writers Facebook group. It's free. You just need to request and answer some questions to get in there. The link is in the description. And also I have a new class called The Pitch Fix, which is only $37, and you can sign up for it now. The link is also in the description as well. I hope that you will join my email list. Okay, that is it. Have a great one. Happy writing.